Bonjour, bonjour, mes amis. It is delightful to see you here this evening, and also equal delight to see you, Dr. Varden. How are you doing?
I am doing quite well. I am so
Yeah,
happy to be back in the Northeast and all amongst
yeah.
my travels. And it is lovely always to
Oh, well,
be
Napita
here with
says,
you.
yeah. I don't know if anyone caught that, but she meowed right into the mic as you were saying I just got back, and so she was welcoming you back, and she was welcoming the audience.
Oh, thank you, Nikita.
Yeah, and hello audience. We're so grateful to have you here this evening because we're gonna dig into it. And this is always
Oh, yeah.
such an amusing topic, Dr. Varden.
Oh, yes.
Because I think as many ways as many ways as people can be creative, I'm sure you've probably seen at just as many detox plans. What are some of the crazier and audience, please in the chat toss in either the crazier detox you've done or the crazier ones you've heard of. Dr. Varden, what have crossed your desk? What cases have you seen of crazy detoxes?
Oh, gosh. Um, Juice cleanses,
Mm-hmm.
like just having a particular, like celery juice,
Yeah.
like only having that
Yeah.
for several days, or just um oh gosh, what else that I've actually dealt with?
Yeah.
Well, there,
Mary, oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
No, please.
Well, I was going to say there's always the water fasts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, crazy, it can be good, but maybe not. And,
Yeah.
there's definitely things to be said, but I think that's diving a little bit more into the extreme,
Yeah.
extended fasts like that. What about
Yeah.
you? I would love to hear some of the things.
Yeah, so Mary in the chat mentioned the master cleanse, which is I believe if we're talking about the same master cleanse, it's a combination of cayenne and maple syrup that you drink for several
Ah,
days. So
right.
I've seen that one. I've seen a lot of herbal protocols
Mhm.
where people take all these funky herbs and then they poop out black for a week and then and then they go back to their chips because they feel so horrible. Um,
Right.
what else? I think I've heard of a lot of, and this is a little bit more recently. Oh, yeah, Colleen's mentioning cabbage soup. That was very popular for
Right.
a time being. Green tea and green tea extracts were really popular for a time.
Yeah.
Cindy's mentioning grapefruit. Yeah, like I feel like the only
Oh,
limit to detox here is people's creativity. Yeah.
oh, absolutely. And actually, it's funny that she had mentioned about the grapefruit, because I remember one that was like an olive oil grapefruit and Epsom salt.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's exactly what Cindy mentioned. Grapefruit, olive oil,
Oh,
salt.
okay.
Yeah,
Oh, there we go.
yeah.
Grapefruit and olive oil. Yeah.
Yeah. So audience, what we're hoping to do this evening after we kind of get out a few of the laughs, because I mean, we've all tried it. I remember being
Mhm.
young, I did some stupid things as well. But what we want to do is like it's because everyone comes in well intentioned, right,
Yeah.
Dr. Varden? Yeah, like I
Oh,
think,
absolutely. It's
yeah.
just when it starts going to the extreme, like Jessica, I just noticed that. And that's why I had that face. She said she's seen people drink only watermelon juice for about 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there again, there can be some good in some of these things, but it's how much, how you do it, the approach, and certainly the timing, because, these
Yeah.
types of detoxes, when we are talking about detox protocols, they are just that. It's more of a treatment type that have confinements of the time period in which you do them,
Yeah.
not such extensive um, ways of going about, like 3 to 6 months of just watermelon juice.
Yeah. And I think too, right? Like most people come to the idea of a detox for very good reason, right? Like we sit
Yeah,
on these webinars, we talk about how many pollutants are in the environment, the change in food. We talk a lot about, to an extent, the need to detox,
right.
right? And so I can really appreciate why people are like, well, I want to, I need to,
Mhm.
and how that can also get then wound up by whatever trendy thing is happening. Yeah, yeah. And so,
Right.
audience, what we're hoping to do this evening is to explore. natural processes within the body, how your body goes about detoxing them, and then how you can naturally support those to the end of a very personalized look based on your genes. What detox pathways within your body aren't the strongest and might you want to support, and which ones are doing great, and how do you want to go about doing this safely and with purpose? Yeah, Dr. Varden, anything else that you want our audience to know this evening?
Well, I think that by taking a look at the poll,
Oh,
I'm hoping everyone filled it out, that we can actually get some ideas on what they are looking to get out of this webinar tonight. And we
yeah,
can
yeah,
tailor our what we
perfect.
discuss for
Yeah.
that.
So thank you, Vanny or Katie, for popping that up. So, audience, Dr. Varden and I show up to the end of supporting you, teaching you what you want to learn, what you want to know. And so the poll questions really help guide the rest of the conversation. So, to Dr. Varden's point, we're going to jump into the poll questions, figure out what you want to know, and we'll tailor the rest of how we chat to that. So, the first question we asked is, what are you hoping to address with a detox? What motivates, because detoxes aren't always pleasant. So, what motivates you? The biggest one here is brain fog or fatigue. So it sounds like our audience is really struggling with a sense of, I'll call it lethargy within the body, a little bit of drudge within the body, and hoping that a detox can address that. Really close runners up are going to be hormone imbalances. Audience, I'm very curious if this is more, we're talking through women and we're talking either periods or menopause, or for men or women, if we're talking libido, because I think that will really help us understand, audience, why you're here tonight. Because both, I would offer, people have tried to address both through detox, and people can also derail both through detox. Yeah, so audience in the chat, please let us know if that's a for women more menstrual or for either or more a libido concern. Yeah. And then I'm also seeing here the third runner up here is really sitting with GI issues. We're talking bloating and constipation and all the things. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm seeing a few comments on low libido. So Dr. Vern will have to make sure we speak to that because I've seen an audience hear me when I say this. I've seen people worsen their libido of consequence to poor detox protocols. So we'll make sure we're very mindful of that as we go along. All
Yes.
right. The next question that we have here is, have you ever done a detox before? And and a majority of our audience have. Dr. Brennan, have you? Have you ever tried
Oh,
cycled through? Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Me too.
Different types,
Yeah.
depending on the need.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. So most of our audience has. The next question we asked here, what best describes your approach? And so a fair portion of the audience tries to do this through diet and lifestyle, which I'm elated to, yeah, I'm seeing you
Yeah.
nod. I'm elated to read
That's
that.
really nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah. 30% is saying they followed trends or supplements. And then about 20% is saying, I'd love to, but I don't even know where to start. There's a lot of information out there. Where do I even start with that? So hopefully by the end of this presentation tonight, you'll have a bit better of an idea of where to go with your detox. Yeah. All right, Medell. Why don't, Dr. Varden, why don't we start with kind of the natural processes or how detox happens within the body, the start to finish? Because I think people hear detox and they assume celery juice, or maybe they assume a bunch
Mhm.
of supplements, or they assume things that are outside of the body. So
Right.
before we introduce any of those agents, Dr. Varden, talk to me a little bit about how body naturally goes about detoxing.
Absolutely. And it's very important to delineate the difference between the normal detoxification pathways, the normal processing, okay, that your body goes through every day for
Hmm.
your entire life, okay, as compared to doing a very specific detoxification protocol for the specific removal of things like maybe heavy metals, parasites,
Hmm.
something like that, that's very specific. That is a therapeutic protocol. Two different things. Yes, they do affect and the genes will overlap, but it is the focus and the way that it is going about. And I wanted to mention that people supporting their detoxification through diet and lifestyle, that is fantastic. And that's more of supporting that daily general detoxification, the normal processes of the
Mhm.
body, as compared to things like celery juice or fasting and things like that. That's more of a therapeutic. So I wanted to make sure that people understood the difference.
Good call out.
So when we're talking about detoxification, so the body has three phases, three general phases of detoxification. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up an analogy where I want you to think of the phases of detoxification like a garbage disposal system. Okay. So I want you to imagine that your body is a city and that the toxins are dangerous trash. So we'll take it there and you can, visualize this.
I
So
can
there are
smell
three
it.
main, exactly. Oh, trust me, I will be explaining this. So there are three main phases. Okay. So the first phase, this is what we call the activation. And really, what we're doing is we are tagging the trash, we're making it noticed by
Mhm.
the body, by the workers. So imagine that the garbage is wrapped in shiny paper so that the trash workers can't recognize it. All right. So phase one, what we're doing is it opens the trash bag or puts a bright sticker on it so the cleanup
Mhm.
crew knows it's dangerous. All right, but watch out because sometimes when that open trash, when you open it up, it smells way worse and
Mm.
it can be more harmful. So it needs to be taken care of very quickly. Okay. It's like that, that bright neon sticker. It's like, come and get this. No. So that is that first, activation of making
Mhm.
it noticed. The next thing is phase two. So this is the neutralization of it. It's sealing it with, safely. So now the city workers take that open trash, seal it in a safe leak-proof box, like using tape and plastic wrap or hazmat containers, getting that all. And what in the body, what's going on, this is like glutathione, sulfate, methylation, safely packaging that toxin, okay? Now, phase three is actually taking out the trash. This is
Mhm.
the elimination. So finally, the garbage trucks come to carry it away through the sewer systems or through the garbage routes. And this is like pooping, peeing, sweating. Okay, we want to get it out of the body. And really,
Mhm.
what this does is it keeps your body, the city of your body, clean and healthy. So
Mhm.
those are the processes, and there are pathways that we talk about and that we give in your reports that you would find in your anti-inflammation reports. I mean, honestly, they're scattered throughout because we got to detox everything. But mainly they are
Mhm.
focused on in the anti-inflammatory reports
Yeah.
in your DNA 360. So,
Yeah.
if you've got that in front of you, that's the report that you want to go to. And then the sub reports will actually give you the information for each one. So we're talking antioxidation. We are talking glutathione conjugation, methylation, and then you'll also see vitamin D in there. So
Yeah, thank you for so succinctly laying that out. Your analogy was a bit stinky, but it was sound and I liked it.
so are
And
toxins.
so are toxins. And audience, as we continue, I think one of the biggest pitfalls I see with people, especially when they're trying to do a detox, is they forget, I would argue, the most important phase of detox, which is going to be phase three, that actual elimination phase. So, what do I mean by this? They will take, for example, milk thistle, which, or silly bum, if you're looking for the Latin, right? It's this herb that we know is really helpful for the liver and getting rid of things. Or they will take a lot of glutathione to help support, but then they don't do that third phase, which is the actual elimination. right? We don't have a lot of genes that look at elimination because it's a very physical process within the body, right? You know, you're going to be drinking enough water so that you can be peeing things out. You're going to be consuming enough fiber so you can poop things out, or you're going to be moving enough, sweating enough, hot enough so that you can sweat things out, right? So, audience, we're not going to dwell too much on this because there's not as much a genetic element, but please do hear, arguably, this is the most important part of the detox. And it's almost all for none if you're focusing on phase one and phase two, but then not actually eliminating it because it's just then going to hang out inside of the body, right, Dr. Varden?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the trash sitting in the cells waiting for the pickup, and it's not getting picked up. And then
Yeah.
it starts, piling on more and getting more stinky. And then, all the ants and rats and everything else. It's like, no, we don't
Yeah.
want that. And
And
I do want to say, though,
please.
that anytime that I work with a client or that, they say, oh, detox is important. I want to detox. One of my things that I always say, I always work from the bottom up.
Mm,
Yes, literally your bottom, because as you so succinctly put,
yeah.
Dr. Kosterman, you need to be pooping. If you're not
Hmm.
pooping, you're going to be reabsorbing those toxins.
Yeah.
Basically, you're not taking out the trash and it's going
Yeah.
to stink up the place. So, got to be pooping first, but also the lymphatics to
Hmm.
be flowing and draining
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's what's helping to take those toxins from the tissues and the cells and get it to where it needs to go to be processed in the liver and then get it out of the body. So
Yeah.
again, bottom up.
Yeah. And audience, just to really bring this point home before we shift, right? So we talked, there is a rise within North America, and actually I think it's around the world, but I know numbers a bit more specific to North America, an increase of colon cancer. Right. So colon is the large intestine, and in particular, that end part, the terminal part of the colon that will connect with your anus or your butt. Um, there's an incredible increase of cancer rates. And the explored reason for this is plainly people aren't pooping enough, right? So what happens is phase three detox, your liver and a few other things are going to dump those toxins into your large colon to quite literally be pooped out. But because we as a society, and I say this collectively, because we as a society are not consuming enough fiber to kind of help sweep everything out, we are not moving enough to help with some of that paracelsus, which is the fancy way of saying moving poop along to the point where you're pooping it out, right? And we're not doing these sorts of things. That the toxin load is quite literally sitting in that colon, the last part of the colon, and it's creating an environment where cancer then thrives. So the consequence of not detoxing and the very unsexy part of it, which is the pooping, is arguably, again, one of the most important parts. And we're not going to focus on it here, but hear those numbers. There's a rise in colon cancer because there's a lack of pooping. And so, any advice that we offer today, make sure you couple it with drinking enough water so things can be excreted via kidney, eating enough fiber so that things can be pooped out, and moving enough, to Dr. Varden's point, we get the sweat, but also that lymphatic movement, the movement of liquids and taking toxins from an organ, from muscles, from whatever it might be, into the bloodstream so that it can be go through this process of detox, right?
Yes. And I do want to mention, in case you haven't listened to some of our other webinars when we've talked about poop, you're probably going, okay, so we're supposed to be pooping. Well, how much?
Good point.
2 to 3 times a day.
Good point.
So if you're going, oh crap, I'm only going, once every few days. Yeah, that's not enough.
Yeah.
I would not be doing any type of detoxification therapeutic protocol until you were pooping at the very least once a day, but more like
Yeah.
2 to 3 times. So you all need to understand what is normal pooping events, the number. Okay.
Yeah, I love it. I don't. I don't. My sister teases me that the very thing I hate talking about, which is poop, is now my profession. And so I have a bittersweet relationship with everything you're talking about.
Get little poop emojis or a little stuffed animal.
Well, dear, tickle. Okay, let's jump into it. All right, so Dr. Varden, why don't we jump into some of the genes, in particular the genes that really curate both phase one and phase two? And since we have numbers, why don't we start with phase one? What
All
what
right.
gene are we looking at that helps curate how quickly we're sticking tags on different bags?
Okay. So when we're talking about phase one, so phase one, like I said, this is the activation. This would be the cytochrome P450 genes. So when you see the genes that start with a CYP, that means they are part of the cytochrome P450 enzyme family. Okay. So for example, some of the genes in hormones, that is a major concern. It was what, number three on
Mm.
the areas of interest when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
detoxification was hormone imbalance, low libido. Well, the elimination, the breakdown, okay, because elimination is more like phase three, but we need to break and down these toxins. And you know what? Hormones can be toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Our body can utilize them, but then they have to be metabolized. That's just a fancy way of saying they're being broken down. Okay. And just digging a little bit into the science of it. I mean, we were talking about garbage bags. Okay. We want to put those stickers on, close up those stinky
Mm-hmm.
open bags. But really, what's going on is we are taking a fat soluble uh, compound or molecule, okay,
Mm-hmm.
an estrogen, okay, and we need to break it down to make it more water soluble so it can
Mm-hmm.
actually mix with bile and be pooped out. So it can mix, into the
Yeah.
urine and to be peed out because we
Yeah.
cannot excrete the fat soluble.
Yeah.
When you sweat, you don't sweat fat. it's water
I hope
soluble.
not.
So there would be a problem there. So really, that is the essence of
Yeah.
why we have these phases. It's taking that fat soluble molecule and making it
Mm-hmm.
water soluble. So we have the estrogen, and it is with the CYP genes, for example, the 1A1, the 1B1, the 3A4, and all of these start with CYP. Okay, those are the
Mm-hmm.
three genes that actually metabolize estrogen into their particular metabolites. You will find
Mm-hmm.
this in your hormone profile, okay, in
Mm-hmm.
your hormone um, reports.
Yeah.
And guys, yeah, you have these too, because you also have estrogen. You also
Mm-hmm.
metabolize estrogen and have to get it excreted. So this concerns you too. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And it is how well, how fast, how efficient are you doing this? Because it really works into the speed of which these estrogens are being metabolized. That's what's important. And if you do this fast, you could actually have a build up of these open, stinky garbage bags
Yeah.
before they can, be wrapped up and gotten out of there, which can be more toxic. They can be more reactive, which can make you have a increased risk of estrogen toxicity. And that's what that means. It's just that you're breaking it
Mm-hmm.
down um, fast into these metabolites, into the more toxic metabolites before they can then be conjugated, like have a methyl group added to them or a glutathione or whatever a glucuronic acid group to be able to clear it.
Mm-hmm.
So, this is very important, but that's really, what our phase one is when you see that CYP in
Yeah.
front of the gene name.
Yeah. An audience, a point that Dr. Varden is getting to and is very important to understand is when we talk about phase one and phase two, so right, that first tagging of the bag and then actually getting the bag ready for disposal, the pooping, the peeing, and the sweating. The goal is to always have those steps balanced because what Dr. Varden just said is that in that first phase, in that first tagging, when you add a tag, it actually makes the element that you're trying to get rid of more toxic within the body. It kind of thinking about that tag is very pointy, and that pointy tag can poke on things and cause damage within the body if it's not quickly eliminated. Right. So there's a huge element here of when we talk about detox, ensuring you're fueling both pathways, that if you're going to be speeding up your detox, you're going to be equally speeding phase one and phase two. Because oftentimes, audience, what we see is people will really support phase two, or sorry, they'll really support phase one, apologies. They'll support phase one where those tags are really spiky, et cetera, and they'll create a little bit more havoc within the body because phase two, that one that neutralizes and helps with that packaging, gets rid of that spiky tag, isn't being done in a way that can kind of keep up. And so this is very important, audience, that any protocol you have is really supporting both phases, especially to an extent, phase two. And so, Dr. Varden, why don't we transition a little bit into phase two that kind of, takes all these tags, removes the spikes, because there's a lot of genes here. So, audience,
Mhm.
get ready. But there's a lot of different pathways, and I think this is important because one of the biggest complaints, concerns that I hear from people when we talk about detox is they're like, I don't have any detox genes. All my detox genes suck. And while you may be suboptimal to a certain extent, I'm definitely a delicate Sally here, with poor pathways. Here that as we go through this, we're talking through so many different pathways. There is a lot of redundancy in the body when it comes to cleaning up, when it comes to phase two. And so I acknowledge maybe one of your pathways totally sucks. I'm not going to gaslight you and tell you it doesn't, right? But remember that there are many, 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 many different pathways to detox. And so this is where the personalization becomes really, really important. If you know you're not strong in one, understanding what that means, what elements you aren't great at detoxing, and how else can you support your body in that detox. So, Dr. Barton, let's explore all the avenues because there's quite a few.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to the probably more well-known sexy gene that people relate to, which is just the starter of a more important pathway. And that would be the MTHFR gene, the methylation pathway. So yes, that motherfucker gene.
There we go. There. I was
Yeah,
waiting
that's
for it.
it.
I was waiting for it. Good job. Good job. I love it.
So yes. So this is that first gene, the one that gets, all the notice and the bright lights. That MTHFR gene, which by the way, we do look at two. Two, they have the RSIDs of two different areas of that particular
Yep.
gene, and variants in that gene or in those two genes can reduce the methylation efficiency.
Mhm.
So yeah, it is very important, and yes, that can affect hormone clearance and toxin processing, and can down the line increase homocysteine levels. And I know I'm throwing
Mhm.
out a lot of things. So, but it's not the only gene in the pathway. There are
Mhm.
others. There are the ones that we talk about and report in the DNA 360 also include things like SHMT1.
Mhm.
SHMT1 talks about and gives us information on folate, B9, a particular form that might work better for you. The MTR and MTRR genes, these are related to B12, cobalamin, and that can tell us the form that best suits you in your genetics.
Mhm.
Things like FUT2, okay, that particular gene lets us know if you are a secretor or not, how well you can
Yeah.
transport B12 from the gut into the bloodstream. If you need some help, or if there are different ways or forms of B12
Mhm.
that would work best for you. And then our final player, the LeBron James of our team, COMT, our COMT gene.
Mhm.
That is the gene that puts that methyl group and conjugates it, okay, onto that substrate, onto the
Mm-hmm.
toxin, onto that estrogen metabolite. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very important.
Yeah.
So that whole pathway, a lot of things going on. And
Yeah.
that can definitely inform us on how best to support. And
Yeah.
also, if you're doing something that could actually cause some backups and some problems.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. So audience, the methylation pathway, I think Dr. Varden wisely brought this up first because arguably it's one of the most important detox pathways you have alongside many other systems in the body. So Vanny or Katie, if you wouldn't mind, just we've done several webinars on methylation
mhm.
before. Vanny or Katie, if you wouldn't mind linking to that in the chat, because audience, it's very important, but we also don't want to gloss over some of the detail. We want you to have that detail, but I'd really encourage you watching our webinars on it, because we're going to kind of at least through this webinar gloss over it because we want to cover the other detox pathways. So I think Dr. Varden wisely brought it up first because it is arguably one of the most important detox pathways you have. And audience, looking at your COMT, looking at your other methylation genes really informs how strong you are in this. And especially if you're doing any form of detox or any form of resting and repairing, what B as in Bob vitamins really can supercharge and support that detox pathway. Okay. All right, Dr. Varden, what other pathways do we have? What other pathways are going to lead us to Rome?
Okay, so can everybody hear me all right?
Yeah, did you change
Okay.
mics?
Actually, I did because my little earbud things were giving me that little sound going, I'm dying.
Well, I'm
Like,
glad
I
you
better
clocked it
change
early.
this while you're talking.
Yeah.
Okay, so another major pathway that a lot of people are aware of is the glutathione conjugation pathway. And this is listed as glutathionization in your DNA 360 reports. And this covers the GST genes. So there are three of them:
Mm-hmm.
GST-T1, T as in Tom, 1, GST-M as in Mary, 1, and GST-P as in Paul, 1. And GST-T1 and GST-M1 are copy number variants. So you will see a number
Mm-hmm.
0, 1, or 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, see, detox is like one of my favorite things as far as these. I always mention them because they're ubiquitous, meaning that they're into everything. They're necessary in
Mm-hmm.
so many things. So very, very important. And a lot of people, and this is probably what you were referring to when people say, I don't have detox genes.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
everybody has detox genes, but again, they are either not working so well or, not working
Yeah.
efficiently.
Yeah.
So, but this is where people can think, oh, I've got, 0 copy number variants and therefore I don't have any. So
Yeah.
that's not
And I
necessarily.
want to I want to make sure we're very specific because I'm seeing a few people in the chat are being like, "Oh, that's me. I don't have any copies." Like, what's up with that? So, we're talking about a family, and this family, as Dr. Varden said, is taking glutathione and attaching it to that toxin, whatever was identified in phase 1, attaching it there. And so, unfortunately, if you have a 0 copy number for either T as in Tom or M as in Michael, T1 or M1, unfortunately, you're not making that enzyme that connects it, meaning you are not producing the enzyme that connects it. And so you are not connecting your glutathione in certain instances, in certain tissues to certain agents. You just don't make that enzyme. It really sucks. And I just want to acknowledge that. But it's not something per se that you can change or support. But what you can do is you can get smart about it. If you know you lack that enzyme, you have to be more mindful of, okay, well, what does that enzyme help connect glutathione to? And if I'm not doing that, I need to ensure I'm reducing my exposure to that thing. And then separately, I'm supporting other pathways that can help with that elimination. Because remember, the body, in all of its brilliance, is exceptionally redundant when it comes to detox. it will find a way to get rid of stuff. And with genes, you get to be a little bit smarter insofar as you get to learn where you're not strong and how you can otherwise support. Right. So, Dr. Varden, do you want to talk briefly? I've seen a few people mention in the chat like heavy metals or pesticides or things like that. What are your kind of superstars in the GST family that will target each of those?
Well, we're talking about, first of all, your GST enzymes. They are your body's detox workers.
Mhm.
When you're thinking of having those missing genes, it's like having no workers show up. So toxins can pile up. Now, sorry, my attention just got pulled over to the chat. I will stay focused.
No, no, you're good. It's funny. I was like, she's thinking something brilliant right now.
Yeah. um, so when we're talking about, for example, the GSTM1, okay, this will affect more so the biomes of the gut and lungs.
Mhm.
So you have to think about things that affect those areas. Okay. Not to mention that GSTP1 also works more with like aerosolized particulates, which also deal with the lungs, because you have to remember that these genes do not exist in a vacuum. It's not like, oh, I got all of this, it's my whole job. No, just like Dr. Kosterman was saying, there's checks and balances. They help to work together to compensate where there might be weaknesses. Now, for people who have zero copies, in both the GSTT1, GSTM1, and are severely dysregulated in their GSTP1, yeah, they generally have. And yeah, I've had a few clients like that, and they've had a difficult time with detoxification. They're much more susceptible, to things like asthma or to having toxins. They're the canary in the coal mine. And so this is something that there's nothing wrong with you per se. Actually, it can almost be a superpower, because in this respect, with you being more sensitive, you are more apt to make the changes necessary to stay away from those things that are flaring you up. Okay. And therefore, lessening your toxic exposure, where someone, who may be fine, strong, they will actually sit in that toxic soup longer, because they don't get the symptoms as easily, which can actually increase their toxic load. So getting to more specificity. So I was mentioning about the GSTM1, okay, the biomes of the gut and lungs. So we are talking about things like carcinogens from tobacco smoke, air pollution, some foods. Also, there can be things from byproducts of oxidative stress. Okay. Just through normal metabolism. Okay. So let's work down and make more of an analogy from, more of the nerdy science words. So we're saying like in our house, okay, we bring in groceries. Yeah. We use those things and we create trash. So getting into the city workers. Okay. So just the normal production of the trash, okay, that we have, that's normal metabolism. That's got to be taken out. So, if those workers are not picking up the trash and there's a buildup, well, that can cause oxidative stress. And if you don't have strong, glutathione conjugation pathways, then that oxidative stress can actually, be problematic.
And yeah, audience, I want to pause here, Dr. Varden, and offer a bit of a clinical pearl, because I haven't looked through all the questions that we've been getting, but I can already anticipate one. How often do you detox? Should I be taking a detox agent every single day? And I think in particular, people with a poor presentation of glutathione genes ask this question because they're like, if I got no copies and my P1 sucks as well, like what's up? Should I be drinking glutathione and praying to the gods? Um, I would offer here what Dr. Varden just said. It's really a question of load, right? So, a question of if you know you have poor agents and you've just been sick, being sick is a huge assault on the body. You're going to have a lot of immune byproduct, a lot of oxidative product, a lot of things that were done to heal you. And so, in that situation, you'd want to up your detox materials, your detox agents, the glutathiones of the world, the NACs of the world, the liver, sorry, the psyllium, the milk thistles of the world. After that, right? Be strategic. Audience, hear this. If you have poor detox pathways, when you know you've been stressed, when you know body has been stressed, leveraging those agents to support the cleanup because you don't clean up very well or very quickly. Okay. And so think about this. So, obviously, if you've just been sick, a detox protocol possibly after the fact. If you've been exposed to a lot, so maybe you travel, you have a lot of plane exposure and you go to a wedding, so you have some fun food and some fun alcohol, thinking about a detox or a clearance after that, right? Audience, stop. Detox needs to be thought about definitely in terms of, maybe once a quarter, and we'll talk through that in a little bit, but also think of it as something that is responsive and reactive to what is going on in your world. And this will include stress too, right? Because I think Dr. Varden's really beautifully articulating that if you don't have strong presentations here, you have to be more strategic when you know your body has been assaulted and the kitchen inside is pretty dirty. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to touch on, because one of the things that you had mentioned about the toxins, you said heavy metals. And I want to
Mm.
make sure to address that, because I'm sure a lot of people are like,
Mm.
oh, well, like mercury and lead and arsenic and, these things that we get exposed to. So the glutathione conjugation gene, the GST gene that deals more with that, is your GST1. And again, also is a player in those carcinogens that I was mentioning that GST-M1 plays in, cigarette smoke, air pollution, things like that. So if I were to go back to that analogy of the cleaning crews in your body. So just to kind of summarize these GST genes. So GSTM1, okay, that's M as in Mary 1, is like the team that handles big, dangerous messes, okay, like the carcinogens and reactive chemicals. And so we're talking like tobacco smoke, pollution, drugs, things like that.
Mhm.
If we are talking about the GST T1, T as in Tom 1, they specialize in more of the small, sneaky spills, those solvents,
Mhm.
small toxins. So we're talking like industrial chemicals and pesticides, things like that. And then the GSTP1 that deals with the toxic metals, the smoke, plus helps with cleanup after stress or injury, like
Mhm.
Dr. Kosterman was commenting on. So
Mhm.
having all three working well means your body can handle that broader range
Yeah.
of toxins more safely.
Yeah. The only edit I would have there is T1 is a big player in heavy metals. And so for those that have no copies of T1, being very, very mindful of heavy metal exposures, in particular as you get older, because that stuff tends to accumulate. Very, very, very important because that'll have a lot of like cardiovascular outcomes as well as brain fog and sluggy outcomes. Because I saw that being very important to audience as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely. And a lot of them, they have crossover functionality.
Yeah.
Again, one picks up where the other, might be lacking, lots
Yeah.
of checks and balances.
If
So
you're alive and kicking, you can detox, I promise. Everyone is able to detox. It's just the capacity and how much help you might be needing. Okay. I think let's talk a little bit around glucuronidation. I'm really proud. It took me 5 years to be able to say that word, and here I am, 5 years later, I can say it. So let's do glucuronidation, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. So Dr. Varden, do you want to talk through glucuronidation, which is another one of our pathways?
Absolutely. So some of you are probably frantically looking through your reports going, where is
Mm-hmm.
it? No, you're not going to find it in your inflammatory or inflammation reports. You are actually going to need to go to your hormone reports to find these genes. These are the genes that start with UGT. So we're talking about UGT2B17, 2B15. Those are the two that we actually report that you can see and take a look at. The UGT2B17, there we go, is also a copy number variant. So you will either have 0, 1, or 2 copies. The UGT2B15, there we go, is a SNP, single nucleotide polymorphism. So for that one is a T, would mean that you have faster glucuronic activity. The G would be slower. So you're probably going, oh, good, bad. It's not so much of a good or bad. It just is.
Yeah.
How does this work in the whole picture? Because remember, they are just players on the larger team.
And I think I'm glad you brought this up, audience, more than any other gene that we've talked about so far when it comes to detox, the glucuronidation genes have the most nuance. So, for example, with UGT2B17, this is the copy number variation. If you have no copies, you are poor at clearing androgens and you are poor at clearing certain xenobiotics, right? And that'll include some plastics. I hear people talking about that. But you're also slower at clearing antioxidants. So it's this interesting double-edged sword in that you're holding on, you're not able to clear out some of your microplastics and xenobiotics, but you also have higher circulating levels of certain antioxidants because you're not clearing it out. So, audience, more than any other gene suite that we talk about, glucuronidation is that double-edged sword. Dr. Varden also mentioned it with the UGT2B15. Oh, mon dear. It's so close, audience. We're going to get there. In that certain presentations, the T will process certain medications quicker versus slower. You're going to have more DHT. Like this is such a mixed bag. And so, audience, I think in particular, if glucuronidation is something you're working on, you might want to consult with a clinician to really understand the picture in relation to your health goals. Because I think the nuance isn't going to be properly captured here because it's always going to be gene in relation to health circumstance and health goal. Interpreting for a male or a female is going to be different. Interpreting for different staging of life, right? These guys will have a lot of impact for males in the audience, prostate cancer, especially as you get older, for women to a certain extent, xenobiotics and certain estrogens. So audience, hear us when I say these are really important ones, but they're also ones that are most nuanced, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting to note that the glucuronidation pathway actually eliminates up to 70% of prescription drugs, food additives. Okay. And, so this is, really important, to know how you are processing, how quickly that glucuronic acid is being conjugated to these toxins. And it's really interesting because the glucuronidation pathway actually works across the 3 phases of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 that we were talking about earlier. Because when it comes to the activation part, the body actually produces glucuronic acid from glucose. Then in the conjugation, okay, the attachment, those UGT enzymes attach the glucuronic acid to the toxin or drug. And then for excretion, this new water-soluble compound, which is actually called a glucuronide. That's okay.
I see you. Good job.
Glucuronide. Okay, is excreted in the urine and bile. So it actually has functions that span across, these phases. And there was something I wanted to make sure that we do mention and talk about, that you had mentioned before we started the webinar, and that was the use of things like ibuprofen, acetaminophen,
Mm.
things like that. Okay, because glucuronidation actually helps with the metabolization and clearance of that. And some people, will go a little heavy on taking this for a while, and it will, that in itself will actually downregulate the body's natural ability to make glutathione, which
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of crossovers.
Yeah.
So things that we need to be aware of. And I didn't know if you wanted to do a little plug about that before we jump over to the next, because I wanted to make sure that we did mention that.
Yeah. I think
Or did you?
what I will say is that both acetaminophen or Tylenol is the brand name, and then certain NSAIDs, which think of like Advil, that sort of thing. Um, they have incredible impact on kidneys and GI tract and liver. And one of the consequences of that, as Dr. Varden is saying, is not only do they take up kind of processing space, meaning when you take these agents, your glucuronidation, amongst other processes, need to manage those agents to help clear them out. But separately, they will downregulate your capacity to have that. So, while I think occasional use of these agents, if you have a headache once in a blue moon, have at it. But if you are in the space where you're having it, I would even say more than once a week, that's where you really do need to engage with the doctor and say, this is what is motivating me once a week. Here's the pain point. This is why I take it once a week. What can we do about that? Because you don't want to be compromising some really, really important systems. And just to quickly dovetail before we jump into Q&A, I know our audience asked around hormones and libido. Be mindful of how you support these systems and really get some tailored, customized support. Why do we say this? As you upregulate your glucuronidation, especially if you're doing it, you're pouring gasoline on the proverbial fire there, it does help with the clearance of androgens being our testosterones. And for both men and women, testosterones fuel our libido. Okay. So for different, again, this goes to an extent beyond what we can cover here. I think we've done quite a few, or we've done a few, maybe not quite a few. Vanny and Katie, maybe if you could put them in the chat, we have done some conversations on libido, but be mindful that as you do detox, and I've seen this come across my desk so far, someone really well-intentioned is like, I'm going to do this detox. And they come back a month later and they're like, I used to love sex and now I don't even know what it is. I don't care what it is. And part of that is because their detox has removed their androgens and separately probably also messed up the creation thereof. So be very mindful when you're doing certain protocols, when you're pouring gas on systems that clear out your hormones, that will have impact. And it doesn't have to. You have to do things intelligently, coupled with a practitioner, coupled to a way that is very, very supportive of the body. Okay. And so if you're looking to do that sort of stuff, like don't hesitate to reach out to us to get more of that personalized insight. D'accord. Dr. Varden, anything else that you want to toss in here before we move into our Q&A? Because I see quite a few questions. This is a popular topic.
Yes. I really want to jump in on these questions, and because I think from there we can actually work off of some of the tangents to fill in some more that is useful, because we've mentioned about hormone imbalance, low libido. We talked a bit about the brain fog and fatigue, but a couple things that we didn't get into as much, maybe a tweak, like bloating, constipation,
Oh, oui,
gut
oui.
discomfort, which was a number 2 on our list. Things that people were, interested in, why they wanted to detox, or, these were the kinds of issues, as well as losing weight. That came in as number 4, which can actually work into some of that bloating, constipation. and you certainly don't feel very light and svelte when you're all bloated and you look like you're 6 months pregnant. So,
No, ma'am. No,
comfortable.
ma'am. And I thank you for being so mindful of our audience. So audience, please do thank Dr. Varden for being mindful of it because I'm clearly distracted by the cat on my desk.
So,
Yeah, yeah. I
so
think,
shall we jump into some of the
yeah,
questions and then make sure that we work in,
yeah,
speaking upon some of these other issues.
yeah, yeah. All right. So Cindy is asking our first question, and it dovetails nicely given we just talked around glucuronidation. So Cindy is asking the question of how do you help glucuronidation? And again, audience and Cindy will be very specific here. Be mindful of how much you help it. We want to help it, but remember there's a balance to these sorts of things. And so by pouring proverbial fuel on the fire, it will have impact. But Dr. Varden, what are your go-tos when you want to be supporting glucuronidation, in particular for people who may not have the strongest pathways there?
Well, like I had mentioned before, glucuronic acid is made from glucose. Now,
Mhm.
that does not mean that you go out and eat a whole bunch of starches and sugars, but our body actually makes glucose, and processes that. But I would go with things that are major cofactors: magnesium, B
Mhm.
vitamins. This
Mhm.
may sound awfully familiar with another pathway, namely like methylation. Well, I mean, magnesium is so important. It's a
Everything.
factor in well over 300 enzymatic
Mhm.
reactions.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
B
Mhm.
vitamin is very, very important. So, but those are two particular
Yeah.
cofactors. But when we're talking about foods, one thing that I really like: lean into foods first.
Mhm.
Get your nutrients from your food. Let food
Yeah.
be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food. Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli,
Mhm.
Brussels sprouts, kale, cabbage, things like that.
Yeah.
Again, sounding familiar when we're talking about other
Yeah.
detox pathways, but like things like apples, especially with the peel, very rich
Mhm.
in quercetin, fiber. Remember what
Mm.
you were talking about earlier? God,
Mm.
fiber.
Mhm.
Um, citrus fruits, things like that. Dandelion greens helping to support, digestion and detox. And I love my dandelion teas. And
Mhm.
I'll even forage for dandelion greens, especially in the spring, and put them in my salads.
Yes,
So
ma'am. Yeah. Yeah.
but definitely increasing fiber. Fiber is
Yeah.
so important.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment on a couple of supplements
Mm.
that can be very helpful?
Yeah, I think people there are a lot of supplements that focus on some of the agents within the cruciferous broccoli family. I got glucuronidation. We'll lay my
Little
crown on that.
wins.
For the broccoli family. Um, so I would say there are a few supplements in particular if you're looking to do either you have a medical condition that really inspires the use of this. I think of a lot, especially within the cancer space or within chronic illness. But separate to that, other supplements that I would think through would really be that cruciferous family. Calcium D-glucarate, right? Here, that glucuronic acid, the D-glucarate, is going to be one of those agents that is leveraged within glucuronidation. So having that in particular, if estrogen is a concern, that will sit within the gut and it will help that process there. And I would also really think through how are you supporting your biome, right? I wouldn't say necessarily supplements are going to be my first go-to when it comes to supporting biome, but there are going to be certain strains, especially if you're struggling with, like if you've done something like our DNA Gut 360 Premium, and it's telling you you're poor in certain species and this is impacting detox, right? So this is a poop test that will really give you a litmus as to how the biome is impacting the balance of the body. Um, those sorts of things can be really helpful. And if you are looking, one thing I encourage people to be doing, um, a few times a week if they have the energy and effort. And this is a detox. This is kind of food be your medicine. Is you can kind of supercharge your broccoli family, and how you can do this. And this will take some energy and effort, but once you get used to it, it's very powerful. You want to be taking broccoli sprouts. Okay. So take your broccoli sprouts, wash them. That's very important. They can be a huge conduit of E. coli. Wash them, freeze them, ground them up with some mustard, and take a shot. Quite literally, this is very utilitarian here. Just shoot that back instead of some alcohol. And the freezing of it will enhance the concentration of the important agents there. The mustard is going to make it more bioavailable. But these are things that if you do this once a week, kind of gives your body that jolt, something that's really supportive. And you kind of think of this on that weekly basis, right? Once a week you clean your house. Once a week you do some broccoli. A broccoli shot that is disgusting, but here we are. So I hope that was helpful in terms of glucuronidations, Cindy. All right. Colleen is asking the question. I think we answered this, but we can reiterate where the hormone reports. So, Colleen, when you sign into either the app or the portal, you should see different sections of a report. So, mood and behavior, sleep, cardiovascular, etc. It's going to be one of those sections. I think it's second or third last. It's on the second half, so you might need to
It
scroll over a little
actually
bit.
is listed as hormones, fitness, and body type. That's
Dr. Barden, I adore you.
the name of the main report. Okay, because there are the 6 main reports. So
Thank you.
that's where you'll find it, and just click
Thank
on
you,
there, and then
Deb.
you've got your sub reports, and that's where you can find all that wonderful information.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. Barden. Okay. So Faye's asking a question. What can she do about estrogen toxicity? Yay. Faye, if you're still present in the chat, what phase of life are you? Can you just give us an age range? Because that will, like, where you are in your menstrual life is going to impact the answer to a certain extent here. So Faye, if you're here, Faye is 66. So I'm going to speculate you are postmenopausal. I'm gonna imagine yes. Yeah, definitely, definitely. Dr. Barden, thoughts there?
Well, when you're talking about estrogen toxicity, that's a little bit of a loaded question, because are you thinking of it genetically speaking, like what I was mentioning earlier, that you are genetically leaning toward an estrogen toxicity increased risk, which is strictly based on genes, not necessarily actual presentation or the measurement of which, especially postmenopausal, we're not making a lot of estrogen. But what we are, yes, it still gets metabolized. It can be in such minute amounts that really, at this phase in your life, yes, I am postmenopausal.
Congratulations.
That thank you. Hence why I'm doing hormone replacement. But anyway, that's another story. That you actually get some testing done. Test, don't guess. Know what your body is actually producing, because there could be things that you are doing, that you eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables, that maybe you are taking supplements that are affecting the way that your body is metabolizing and processing the estrogen, the little amount of estrogen that you are making. And we want to make sure that that's balanced. So by doing some blood work, first of all, finding out how much are you making, or, doing like a Dutch test, the dried urine test of comprehensive hormones, to say, okay, where are you? How much of each of these hormones are you making? And then it actually has a section where it looks at the metabolites. How much? What's the percentage between the 3 types? Your 2-hydroxyestrone, 4-hydroxy, and 16-alpha hydroxyestrones. Those are the different metabolites. So, again, test, don't guess. so the question was very broad, but to have someone who understands your genetic profile and looking at the labs to be able to see what's actually going on and then can piece everything together, that's really where the magic comes.
Yeah, I value that answer because I think it would also incorporate history of personal cancer history as well as family cancer history. And that will really inform, especially the action plan there. So test, don't guess, Dr. Varden, you got it to a T. All right. Lynn's asking our next question, and they're asking, do you consider a coffee enema a detox? If so, how often do you recommend? So what Lynn is speaking to is an enema being something will be inserted into the rectum, and then there's a liquid of some sort that is tossed there. The goal is twofold: physically cleaning out, right? That surge of water or coffee, whatever it might be, is going to physically remove things. But then separate, and this is specific to the coffee, having caffeinic acid amongst a few other of the phytochemicals there was a thought of this might be helpful. So there are a few conditions where this is studied in, a few digestive conditions, I believe a few cancer inflammatory conditions this is studied in. So I would say if you are struggling with one of those conditions, you'd want to have a very pointed conversation with your practitioner as to whether it's appropriate for you. For the general population, I'll be quite honest, it's not something I generally recommend or think people need in order to be healthy. Because I think our body is robust enough. And if you're pooping and peeing and doing all the other things, do you need this level of support? That said, I think, Lynn, if you're sitting there and being like, but I've read this amazing study that says it can be helpful, reaching out and evaluating that with your provider on a one-on-one basis can be helpful. Because I think there's always nuance in the individual. But I think in general, unless you have a specific condition, it's not something that is required on any frequency to be supporting you. Yeah. Dr. Varden, any other thoughts there?
Well, I do utilize it in certain therapeutic detoxification calls. Again, it's not something that, you do regularly every
Yep.
day ad infinitum. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I do like me a coffee enema now and then.
It does clean things up.
It really does help that mechanical clean out of the colon. I mean, but it does so much more than that. Really, it's the palmitic acid crystals that are in the coffee enemas that travel up that hepatic portal vein. Okay, so we're talking about the liver. Okay, and it goes directly to the liver. And the crystals actually, these palmitic acid crystals, actually helps to jumpstart several liver metabolic processes. It encourages that bile flow, increases glutathione production. Actually, it can increase it up to 700% for several hours following a coffee enema. But it should be done under the guidance of a practitioner who knows what they're doing, who knows your history, who knows what it is being used for. So that way, is this right for you? Because no, I don't recommend it for everybody. So it is more specific, but it can be utilized in a very strategic way. And yes, it can be very useful.
Yeah. And I think the provider you go to is also very, very important because they need, yeah. Excellent answer. Thank you for being a little bit more specific and precise with the phytochemistry there. All right, Trina has our next question. How do you know to detox and what type of detox you need? All right.
Great question.
I know, I love it. And so why don't let's ground this maybe possibly within brain fog and fatigue, Dr. Varden, because I think there's a whole host of reasons. So we're going to exclude kind of medical conditions and we're going to focus on more the air quote general. I feel tired. At what point in time might a detox be appropriate for me? And I would speculate this is kind of where the art of medicine comes in. We'll probably have slightly different answers. So why don't we each offer an answer? Because I think it's important for people to hear that there's not going to be one answer per se, even though ours will definitely be within the same lane. Yeah. Do you want to lead?
Oh, I thought you were going to start. That's okay. Okay. Yeah, really, when you want to know, hey, how do I know what I need to do to detox? What type? Well, a lot of that comes with what's going on. How are
Mm,
you feeling? What are your symptoms? And this is where working into an answer that Dr. Kosterman had commented on, just prior, about you need to go to a practitioner, practitioners who know what they're doing, who can
mm,
distill out the issues that you're having, looking at the symptoms. So a few of the things that you all were mentioning in our poll questions. Okay, top things: brain fog and fatigue. So we're looking at, hey, are you having these things? But it's not just about brain fog and fatigue. I mean, yes, that's definitely the overarching, things that we don't want, but it's asking the right questions to find out more of what's going on. Is there any sleep disturbances going on? Are there memory lapses? Is there anxiety, irritability? What other symptoms are
yeah.
going on?
Yeah.
Also testing, you know, it, do you have any type of heavy metal, toxins in your body, or are you just deficient in vitamins? Because sometimes
Mm-hmm.
just take, having, some magnesium or vitamin D, and I'm just kind of throwing out some things, but,
Yeah.
supporting yourself with foods and even maybe with supplementation to help with the insufficiency or deficiency in these basic nutrients that your body needs to function well, to make sure your mitochondria are actually able to make the ATP to give you the energy to be able to focus and think, and and to help
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
all the processes. So
Yeah.
a lot of it is in the questions. And
Yeah, I think Dr. Varden's getting to a really good point of people think they can kind of anyone can do a detox and just follow a basic protocol, and it's not always going to be the case. But I do think, I mean, for males in particular, postmenopausal women, considering a fasting protocol with your provider can be very, very impactful. For females who are menstruating, that's a little bit more nuanced to what's going on in your world. And so talking with a provider as to your health goals can be very helpful in those instances. And I appreciate, Trina, this probably isn't the answer that you want, where we're like, go talk to a provider. But knowing your genes can be the first best place to do that. And then doing the very basic things, because oftentimes that will be sufficient to kind of do support natural detox.
oh,
Yeah.
you know
All
what?
right.
I'm going to
So,
bring up one thing though, because one of the major, it was number two that people were concerned about: the bloating, constipation, gut discomfort. That could be maybe due to SIBO, small intestinal
yeah.
bacterial overgrowth, or if they're having, say, candida overgrowth. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Again, a test, don't guess. This works
Mm-hmm.
off of symptoms, but also doing something like our DNA Gut 360 premium test, where we're actually being able to see the bacteria and
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in the gut. Do you have more of these pathogenic species, less of the
Yeah.
keystone beneficial species? In which case, yeah, there needs to be some help getting these
Mm-hmm.
out, and
Yeah.
helping that balance. But again, it's the test, don't guess,
Mm-hmm.
asking the right questions.
Yeah. 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 Having an ally with a healthcare provider so that you know why you're detoxing as opposed to just doing it for the sake of that. All right. So we have about 10 minutes and about 10 more questions. So I
Oh,
believe in us, Dr. Varden. We're gonna get there. Kira's asking the question. Is there a therapy protocol for microplastic detox? Is there a diagnostic tool that measures our baseline for microplastics? I believe there, and hold me honest, Dr. Varden, I believe there's some muscle testing. There's a few other more laboratory-based tests that can really assess for it, but those are not commercially available. I have not seen good tests in the commercial space that can assess for this. Where I tend to go for this assessment is first and foremost genes. We have a lot of genes. Our UGT, our glutathione, so close this evening, those really influence how we are able to eliminate a lot of our microplastics alongside assessment of diet and lifestyle and some other symptoms. I think it's more a symptom checklist that tends to assess where microplastics sit as opposed to laboratory tests. And I would offer that any microplastic um, work would need to be informed by genes, because really you'd be looking, if you know you don't have strong UGTs, for example, how do we support that a little bit more pointedly? So I would say this is something very specific to genes. Um, Sweating, though, I think, Kira, tends to be a really good one alongside fiber. As well as simply not exposing, even though, there's only so much we can not expose. Dr. Varden, any other thoughts there for Kira?
I mean, yes, I actually have seen some testing. Usually it's blood.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I've read different things on how to go about removing that. And it really is a matter of working in with someone to
Mm-hmm.
be able to do more reintegration and strengthening the cellular integrity, in your omega-3s, in, giving the cells that stronger structure that the microplastics can actually affect and hinder the integrity of that cellular structure of the tissues themselves. But I know that we have other questions, and I don't want to
Yeah.
go down too many rabbit holes here. So
Yeah, this might be an interesting future webinar that we do, because I think it's a very complex topic, because
yes, it is.
microplastics are really something only our bodies have been experiencing for the past, what, 50 to 100 years, plus minus.
Yeah, not very long. And
We're not very robust in this space yet.
right. And
All
our
right.
genetics are like, what's going on?
Yeah.
How do I deal with this?
So Rebecca is asking, what about microplastics and mold? And I would speculate, just based on the timestamp, this is when we were talking about glutathione. And so Rebecca, just to be specific, from a glutathione perspective, the full GST family will influence it, but also think through the UGT family. Molds, I would really think towards GST M1, Michael 1, and GST P1 in particular, because that tends to be a lot of the aerosolized stuff. So knowing your gene print there will really help support you understand how you manage molds. But ideally, you don't. Ideally, you remove whatever source of mold you're exposed to. All right. Susan has our next question here. If someone has a GST M1 Michael 1 deletion, can they use topical glutathione and get benefit from it? In past webinars, I know it was said that if GST M1 is missing, the body doesn't know what to do with glutathione. Yeah, so Susan, again, remember the GST family, there's several different points with which you can attach that glutathione. So my question here would be, what is the need? Is there a sincere toxicity burden that you need to be increasing your glutathione? And then separate to that, just also being very mindful not to overdo it. In particular for IVs, when you have a deletion, your struggle is not necessarily making glutathione, it's the attachment. And so if you take too much at once, you're going to struggle with that attachment. So I think working with someone to be very mindful and wise as to why, what exactly are you trying to address? Is there a true deficiency of glutathione, right? And then separately, working, especially within your own body, since you have that deletion, to be mindful of when it might be too much, because you'll feel that. You'll feel kind of a fatigue and a funk, if you will, when you start to overdo it. Okay. So I hope that was helpful. All right. Sandy has our next question. And actually it kind of it speaks, I guess, Dr. Varden, do you want to quickly give the 2-sentence summary? So Sandy is, for the audience that can't see this question, Sandy's asking the question of, are there some people based on their genes who should not be taking glutathione as part of their detox protocol? Dr. Varden, do you want to give the 2-sentence summary here?
Yeah. So really, the body, it's not that it doesn't know what to do with glutathione. Okay, that's really an oversimplification. Glutathione is still valuable. I would, if you are missing the copy number variants, I would definitely support the body with the precursors. But still, it depends. I have had clients who have had 0 copies of one, maybe 1 copy of another and off, and they actually handled glutathione fine, but others in the same thing couldn't handle it at all, would have some not so great reactions. Say they were given a glutathione IV and they would actually, got sick and they didn't realize, oh, it's because of that. So it kind of depends on your history, but it's always good to support with the precursors. So things like NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine, selenium, alpha lipoic acid, things like that.
Yeah, love it. All right. I don't know if I'm going to be saying this right, but Mari is asking, what is the difference between copy number variation and SNPs? I'll offer the answer here. So when we talk about DNA, there's many different ways to describe it. When we're talking about a gene, kind of think about a gene like a book, right? There's a plot, it does something, you read it, you're going to learn something. And when you're reading a book, you know that not all pages are created equal. Certain pages are going to have plot points on them. And think of those as like your SNPs. So within that book, those SNPs are pages in that book that have a lot of really important information. It's when the hero catches the bad guy. It's when the knight rides off into the sunset with the princess, whatever it is. Those are the important pages. Those are the SNPs. They're the really important things that tell you how this gene is going to work and what it does in the body, what's going on in that movie, in that book, in that plot. When we're talking about copy number variation, kind of think about it like straight up books on the shelf. Do you have a book on the shelf? And if so, how many? So those with 0 copy number variations, at least for our test, I want to be plain. There's some nuance to this, but at least within our testing suite, if you have no copies of a gene, it means you have no books on that shelf. You don't have that movie, you don't have that book, you don't have that plot point. If you have like 2, for example, it means you have 2 of the same book on your shelf, meaning you have a lot of access to that movie and that book, and you can lend it out even if you want, because you have a lot going on there. So hopefully, Mira, I hope I'm saying that right, and hopefully that answered your question there. All right. Rebecca has our next question here. They're scheduled for an MRI with contrast. What can they do to prepare and support elimination of this? I think Dr. Varden has given some great thoughts in regards to glutathione, so especially a lot of those precursing agents. I would also really encourage a lot of water before and after. Again, you have to follow, they're going to give you very specific guidelines, but a lot of the contrast agents are going to be eliminated via kidney. Okay. And so having enough water and that sort of support there is really, 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 really important. Dr.
I do
Varden,
want to say,
yeah.
as part of the hydration, make sure that you consider adding some electrolytes. Because if you overhydrate of just water, you can actually dilute your fluids. So you want to make sure to, add electrolytes. So we're talking like magnesium, potassium, sodium, trace minerals. Be a little careful with the sodium, but definitely supporting that, also supports the hydration, kidney function. Magnesium, again, I know I get back to magnesium and B vitamins. These are really important. Doing even antioxidants in your vitamin C, or eating foods that are high in vitamin C, because that can help neutralize any oxidative stress, support cellular repair. And this is like general, good, well, healthy habits. Gentle exercise, walking, yoga, enhance that circulation and lymphatic flow. That helps to aid in the natural elimination process. And a couple things I want to say of don't do to do this. Don't do any chelation therapy. Don't do any aggressive detox protocols, before this. Okay. Just that nice, simple, good, healthy habits.
Yeah. Yeah, I would offer that if there's a medical need to be doing imaging, doctors don't hand this out like candy and make people do it for fun. So I would offer it's probably the information you're going to get from that is going to be much more important and impactful to your health than that contrast. So hydrate and take a bit of a breath and know that you're doing the right thing there, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Um, so Marty is asking the question, does taking glutathione not work for everyone genetically? What to take instead to detox from mold? So I think Marty, Dr. Varden is very beautifully articulated precursors and why it may not be appropriate for everyone. If you are struggling with mold, I'd really encourage that you reach out to a provider because I think before you even consider the detox of that mold, you need to ensure it's truly gone from the body. I've seen a lot of people who try to detox a mold that's still very actively growing. And so you need to make sure you're assessing for the mold properly and then supporting that before you even work on the detox. So Marty, I'd really encourage if you want to reach out to us, feel free. CEO at thednacompany.com. We can walk you through that assessment because I wouldn't want you trying to detox from a very active agent within the body. Yeah. Anne has our next. Is high testosterone in a 25-year-old female due to poor detoxification and constipation? Uh, the answer is maybe. So, Anne, if this person you or this person that you know, um, testosterone clearance in particular in women is going to be very, very influenced by genes and your hormone profile there. So I'd really encourage you looking at the profile, understanding, are you someone that naturally creates more testosterone? Separate and additional to that, are you someone that struggles with a clearance? Because that would be one of my first thoughts there. Because typically it's glucuronidation that does so close as we're getting to the end, that does that clearance. And I think if you're struggling with high testosterone, it's there needs to be greater considerations than just constipation and detoxification. There's a lot more going on there. So I'd really encourage you working with a provider, in particular, someone that understands the genes of making that and eliminating that and what other sources there are in your world, in particular diet and lifestyle, right? Exercise, etc. Because if you do certain things, you'll be encouraging the use and the creation of testosterone, which then kind of becomes a snake eating its own tail, right? You're further encouraging that. So hormones in particular, that question is very nuanced, and I'd encourage working with a provider there.
And
Yeah.
this last question is actually
Mhm.
for you because it's your mustard powder and broccoli
Oh,
sprout
pour moi.
shot.
D'accord.
Yeah.
Okay. So Susan's asking, oh, for the shot. Yes. For the broccoli sprout shot, what form of mustard do you use? Mustard powder, ground mustard seed, prepared mustard? It's a great question. I think I'd have to, Dr. Varden, do you have a preference? I usually use like a ground mustard seed. I don't know if that's considered the same as mustard powder though. Do you know if that is the same?
Um, I'm not sure. That's a good
Yeah.
question.
I use, oh, I'm being told by the powers that be is it's effectively the same thing. So
Oh,
ground ground mustard seed is what I would add to that. It's gonna taste straight up nasty, Susan, and audience, just heads up, it's gross. Think about kind of back in your college days when you'd take shots. Same. It's gonna be gross. Yeah. All right. So audience, I hope that was helpful. Um, Dr. Varden, thank you, Medell. I really value, because I think you're so deeply in the trenches of how do we do this sort of detox in an intelligent way, both in the day-to-day diet and lifestyle, but separate. You have really wise insight when it comes to different detox protocols. So thank you for bringing that here today. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And, for all the information and insights that you have, always brilliant and educational.
Hmm.
Just your wisdom is an absolute blessing, not just for me, but I'm sure for everyone here.
Yeah, and audience, thank you, because I think between Dr. Varden and I, you're what inspire us to show up and do all the fun things. So thank you for being party to this. I hope you learned something today. And if there's anything that you do need support with, be it getting a kit, be it understanding what the heck your kit says, or applying the kit to a very specific health concern, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We do this to the end of supporting you in your health in a time when supporting health is a little bit trickier than it has been before. So we want to be here for you. So audience, thank you so much for being here with us. Dr. Varden, why don't we do our favoriteest detox thing out there? And yes, audience, this is going to be detoxifying. So as we dance out, we encourage that you dance out with us because dancing is one of the best detoxes for the brain.
Yes, it
Right?
is.
All right. Au revoir, mes amis. Au revoir.
Take care.
We need like music when we do this because I'm always
Yeah, I
dancing
know.
like to nothing.